The Native American rights movement really began upon the founding of AIM, American Indian Movement, a Native American rights advocacy group founded in 1968. AIM's goals were to get bills passed to create equal rights for Native Americans, to spread awareness of the mistreatment towards Native Americans by the government, and specifically the many treaties the government had broke, and to return land, like Alcatraz, that rightly belonged to Native Americans. One of the primary leaders of the movement was a Native American writer, actor, musician, and political activist named Russell Means, who had joined AIM in 1968, its founding year. Means participated in the Alcatraz occupation, an event where 89 Indian Americans occupied Alcatraz Island in a protest, claiming the land was theirs because of the Treaty of Fort Laramie. Means also participated in and helped plan other protests, such as seizing a Mayflower replica to protest mistreatment of natives by the U.S. and Puritans, the occupation of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, and appeared as a spokesman and prominent figure in the occupation of Wounded Knee. In 1974, Means left AIM for the purpose of running for election of president of Oglala Sioux tribe. He lost the election but remained a prominent figure within the Native Americans' rights movement thereafter. Let's see. The Trail of Broken Treaties was a national protest in autumn of 1972 with the intent of bringing attention to Native American issues. It was sponsored by 8 organizations, including AIM, who had worked together to write up a 20-point paper defining their demands. The protest started on the west coast of North America and it eventually reached Washington, D.C., and then D.C.'s Capitol building. This resulted in the largest political gathering of Native Americans in history. The Nixon administration refused to meet with the protesters to receive their demands and negotiate. The protest, though, did manage to receive a lot of attention from the public and media at the time and bring more attention to the movement. The longest walk was an AIM-led protest that started on February 11th, 1978, and reached D.C. on July 15th, 1978, and was used to bring attention to 11 pieces of legislation that were harming Indian Americans, along with multiple other oppressive political issues that were affecting them. Some notable non-Native Americans that participated in the protest included Muhammad Ali, Senator Ted Kennedy, and actor Marlon Brando. During and after the longest walk, Congress voted against passing a bill that would repeal multiple treaties with Native Americans and passed an American Indian Religious Freedom Act, which allowed Native Americans to use certain ceremonial drugs in worship. President Jimmy Carter refused to meet with the protesters. Let's see. The Bureau of Indian Affairs was a government organization that is in charge of managing the millions of acres of land the government is holding for Native Americans. During the Native Americans' rights movement, they, being a part of the U.S. government, of course, were not defending the Native American rights movement, which resulted in much protest, including an occupation of the BIA headquarters in 1972. The Wounded Knee Massacre was a disaster that took place in 1890 near Wounded Knee Creek. The United States 7th Cavalry Regiment went to Lakota Reservation to find the Lakota tribe in order to disarm them. A rifle went off in the natives' camp, and the cavalry proceeded to open fire upon the civilians once the massacre was over. 150 people were dead and 51 people were injured. The spot where the massacre occurred is held as an almost sacred place by the Native Americans, and is specifically used as an example of the suffering the U.S. government has caused the Indian Americans. The land where the massacre took place was taken by the U.S., and AIM demanded restoration of treaty negotiations. On February 27, 1973, the Wounded Knee occupation began. It was a 71-day standoff between 200 AIM Native American activists and law enforcement. During the time, the Nixon administration could not participate in the negotiations because they were preoccupied with the Watergate scandal. After gunfire broke out, killing multiple activists and paralyzing U.S. Marshal, the elders of Oglala Lakota called an end to the occupation. While the occupation had ended with violence and casualties, it did attract mass media coverage, bringing more attention to the movement. In modern day, AIM is split into two factions: the AIM Grand Governing Council, the GGC, based in Minnesota, and the AIM International Confederation of Autonomous Chapters, ICAC, based in Denver, Colorado. The GGC takes a controlled political philosophy, while the ICAC takes a spiritual, more mainstream approach to activism. AIM nowadays seems to have a more left-wing environmentalism view on politics, recently battling things such as the Keystone Pipeline, uranium mining, and Dakota Access Pipeline.